Vez had taken the biggest gamble of his life so far. If he succeeded, he'd be able to produce a stellar mech and sell it for a hefty profit, and likely make more than enough money to meet his impending interest payment. Unfortunately, his success dangled on a string, and he risked the whole scheme coming apart every time he stumbled. First, he needed to grow accustomed to the Caesar Augustus. Fortunately, an actual universe production license also doubled as a virtual license in Iron Spirit's terms of service, so he just needed to send a copy of the license agreement to the game's support to tinker and sell the model in-game. As a last-gen mech by the present day's standard, the CA1 counted as a 5-star mech in the game. That meant only older, more skilled potentates could buy it. However, the Caesar Augustus could be sold for a higher price, which would allow Vez to earn some actual profit from his sales if he designed a good enough variant. Iron Spirit placed a cap on the quality of mechs in their tiered leagues, the quality of mech a player could use depending on how well they progressed in the game. A Bronze Leaguer only had access to 1-star mechs. A Silver Leaguer had access to 2-star and 3-star mechs. A Gold Leaguer had access to 4-star and 5-star mechs. Most potentates that hadn't pursued a professional career in piloting languished in that league. When a player reached Platinum League or further, they gained unrestricted access to every mech, even the mythical 10-star ones. However, the higher the tier, the more expensive the mechs, initially and in repairs, if damaged. More expensive mechs often required weeks of in-game time to repair if they had been completely destroyed. This meant that a fair number of Platinum and Diamond players occasionally used 5-star mechs in competitive matches for the purpose of earning some easy gold. Consequently, 5-star mechs were some of the most profitable in Iron Spirit. High-performing models often attract significant amounts of attention. However, whether Vez could break into the market was the real question, considering he needed more familiarity and expertise with the Caesar Augustus. In the 45 days leading up to the Young Tigers exhibition, Vez needed to conduct an extensive and realistic redesign of the CA1 stock model. He also had to acquire new sub-skills and credits to buy virtual licenses for the components he needed for his redesign. In the meantime, he needed to release multiple mech designs in the game to generate even more credit. Much of his earnings would then be used to buy real universe production licenses for the components he had used in the game. Although it sounded complicated, Vez didn't need to change anything about his current process. He just needed to continue designing variants and putting them onto the in-game market to sell. First, he contacted Iron Spirit support to receive his virtual license. Even a production license for a last-gen mech costs a significant number of credits. He didn't want to be bullied into purchasing a virtual license for a 5-star mech, which potentially ran into the millions. While he waited for his application to be approved, Vez shut off all distractions and loaded the CA1 into the system's designer program to tinker with it. He wanted to pry apart its shiny armor and see how much of a mess its infamous internals were. Besides finding a replacement material for its armor, Vez also needed to optimize its internals to turn the CA1 into a competitive mech. It took one look, and his hopes were dashed. It looked like someone had tried to take a plate of spaghetti and stuff it into a party cup. Somehow, everything fit, but it was mashed together impossibly close. There was little to no slack between the wiring. Cables, pipes, and structural supports were all crammed right next to each other, sometimes dangerously so. If a certain cable broke and happened to spark when it did so, all it would take was a small puncture in a nearby pipe, and the gas inside would ignite. Though Vez knew the configuration inside could potentially result in a catastrophe, he lacked the skills and resources to fix it. All he could do was document every fault he came across and return to the problem later. He spent the rest of the day combing through each and every component, to the point where he even dismantled the engine in order to try and get a better understanding of how everything worked. Once he had finished going over every aspect of the Caesar Augustus, he took a deep breath. He knew that if he wanted to understand it, he needed to fabricate the stock model. He took a minute to log into the in-game market and inspect the model's market conditions. Damn, that's expensive. The average CA1 sold for around 50,000 credits, and that was for an in-game item. The 5-star mechs belonged to an entirely different market segment than the 1-stars. The latter catered to kids, while the former targeted professionals. The raw materials required to fabricate the mech sometimes cost tens of thousands of credits. Since Vez had set the prices on all of his virtual mechs to rock bottom, he had yet to earn even a single credit or gold coin from any of them, despite selling over 100 models. I'm earning a decent amount of DP from every sale. If I raise the price, my mechs won't be able to stay competitive in the market. It's better if I leave the prices as they are. The Caesar Augustus was a marvel of its time. If Vez wanted to solve its many mysteries, he would need to acquire a whole new set of skills. But while he needed to save a lot of DP, he couldn't keep going without credits. He switched to his mail screen and was relieved to see that the game support had approved his request to claim the CA1's virtual license. He loaded the mech stock model in the in-game workshop, and then he received an unpleasant bill. So, it cost about 40,000 credits in raw materials to build the base model. Even though the gold coin price looks a bit more appealing, not like I have a bag of virtual coins either. Vez's lack of available cash stymied his desire to research the Caesar Augustus. There was only so much he could learn by playing around with the mech's design in the designer program. He had learned an important lesson when he designed the Fantasia variants. A passionate mech designer needed to get hands-on with their own creations. Scribbling a few doodles in a design program had never made anyone a veteran designer. A real expert got their hands dirty and put together every part to see how it worked and where any potential problems might occur. With only around 9,000 credits on hand, Vez needed to scrounge at least another 31,000 from somewhere. First, he checked the system, but he couldn't find any option to convert his DP into credits. He could potentially buy a few knickknacks from the shop and sell them for a tidy sum, but that option would waste too many valuable points. Should I call Melinda? He wondered out loud. Family stuck together. If Vez took the time to explain his plans and difficulties to his cousin, he was sure she'd lend him the credits. No, he decided. It's not right. I'm only facing a shortage of credits because of my own poor planning. If he went crying to his family to bail him out, he was sure they would lend him a hand. But it would also prove that he'd got himself in over his head. His aunts and uncles already disapproved of his career path, and he didn't want to provide them with any more ammunition. Then he wondered whether he could sell Lucky's gems. Vez had dug out half a dozen of the shiny treasures, and they all provided minor benefits when they were installed into any mech. He was sure that other experts would love them once they realized that installing just one could improve their mechs. But he shook his head and quickly discarded the idea. No, that's a last resort. If he introduced the gems to the universe, a lot of powerful players would immediately want to know where he had got them. Vez lacked the capabilities to isolate himself from the connected universe he lived in. If he presented anything too suspicious, it would be child's play for a more experienced professional to track him down. Forget about it. I need to figure out something else. What do I have that's valuable, but not so precious that I can't sell it for some quick cash? The workshop? Out of the question. The building, 3D printer, and assembler all constituted his most basic requirements as a mech manufacturer. Vez couldn't part with any of those. If he gave up the workshop, he might as well make a deal with the bank regarding the loan. He wondered what else he had. He had the licenses. He had read through the terms of the Caesar Augustus's production license, and he was aware of what he could do with it. National Aeromotives didn't allow exchanges, nor did they provide refunds for charity licenses, which was how Vez had acquired his. I still have quite a few one-star virtual licenses. At this stage, they're helpful but not necessary to my plans. I wonder if I'm allowed to refund them. I bought them using money from my own pocket, after all. Perhaps their terms aren't as restrictive. Vez searched the galactic net to see whether he could get some money out of the licenses. To his relief, the BSBH Corporation did indeed have a standard policy for returns. A virtual license could be relinquished within a week at no cost if the purchaser hadn't used it for any of their current models. However, if the owner had possessed the license for longer than a year, the game wouldn't offer even 1 credit back. Vez fell into a situation in between, having owned the licenses for more than a week prior, but far less than a year. Iron Spirit allowed purchasers to claim up to 75% of their money back if the licenses remained unused and only 50% if they were. Those terms only applied to licenses bought personally under normal circumstances. Any license purchased at a discount or granted by another institution didn't count. And unfortunately for Vez, since his virtual licenses had been gifted by the system, they fell under that category. Finally, with his head spinning from all the legal jargon and having spent a considerable amount of time combing through all the license agreements, his work paid off. He knew exactly what he could return and for how much. He visited Iron Spirit's support site and submitted a refund application. Astoria Experimental Flight System, 12,500 bright credits. Fayette ECM Mark I, 3,500 bright credits. Red Eye Assisted Aim Module, 4,999.5 bright credits. MTTR Removable Battery Pack, 1,500 bright credits. Harconics Light DMR version 3, 9,999.5 bright credits. Mirren 21 Ultralight Armor Plating, 5,000 bright credits. The total number of credits he expected to receive was 37,499. He left the festive cloud generator out of his claim, because he had grown rather fond of it. He also intended to incorporate the small, innocuous program in his other designs, whenever he could manage it. Since the support staff already had Vez's personal information from his previous licensing request, they were able to quickly process the refund. An hour later, Vez's mail tone chimed, and he received a credit transfer and a message that stated his refund application had been successful. With around 45,000 credits in spendable cash, Vez was more than able to start producing the Caesar Augustus, at least in Iron Spirit. But before he did so, he hesitated. The Caesar Augustus was a monstrously complex mech. While many processes had been streamlined in Iron Spirit's virtual crafting environment, it was still a lifelike simulation. If Vez failed to produce a mech that reached the stock model specifications, the worst-case scenario was that he'd end up with an unsellable mech. Any mech that remained stuck in place meant no new cash flow. Without another source of credits, he wouldn't be able to produce another virtual mech to advance his understanding of the model and earn more cash. He knew that it was crucial for him to succeed. I'm not alone in this, Vez realized, slapping his forehead. Just because I can't beg for money from Melinda doesn't mean I can't ask for advice. He activated his comm and called Bentham. Melinda's face popped up. Instead of the casual clothes she had been wearing during her recent visit, she was now dressed in a formal uniform.
Hey, Vezzy, is everything okay?
I'm good, but I've run into a little trouble.
Okay, can you give me the details quick? I'm technically on a shift, so I need to get back to work.
Vez nodded and described how he had received a grant license for the infamous Caesar Augustus. Naturally, the charity grant that the system had set up was squeaky clean on paper, so he wasn't worried about her checking the paperwork or anything untoward. Instead, he emphasized his determination to master the mech's design. Melinda tutted her disapproval and frowned.
They've sure thrown you in at the deep end. The CA1 is a beast of a machine. It's not really something a fresh college graduate should touch. Are you sure you're okay? This sounds pretty shady.
Never mind that. Is it possible for you to pry some info from the Mech Corps or the Bentham Planetary Guard? Without getting you into trouble, of course. Melinda furrowed her brow.
I can ask the mechanics for some tips. I'll also see if I can dig something up from the archives. I'll pass along anything I can find, as long as it's not classified or proprietary knowledge.
Thanks a lot. Hey, I'm sorry to trouble you so much.
Your family, Vezi. I'll do anything to help you. I've got to go back to work now. See you later.
Bye. With that problem sorted, Vez turned his attention to a different issue. With his DP steadily accumulating, he needed to make a tentative shopping list of subskills he would need in order to rework the CA1. He opened his skill tree and started to go through the available skills.